A good bulk is the fastest way to build muscle as a skinny guy. But there's a problem. Everyone's getting fat. Guys all over social media think bulks like this
For the dirty bulk, man.
will get them jacked. And I made the same mistake. But I learned, and since then built more muscle than ever. Today I'm going to show you how to bulk better than these guys while staying lean. Let's get into it. Before we get into any of the processes or how to avoid getting fat, we should probably know why they do it in the first place. Because if we can get inside these people's heads, then we can know why they do these things and therefore do the opposite so we don't get fat. It comes down to one character trait, one skill, or I guess in this case, a lack of a certain skill. And that is impatience. These guys are just fundamentally impatient. They don't know how to set goals for the long term. They might look at themselves starting right here and they want to achieve a massive goal, but they'll give themselves 3 months. But that's pretty hard if this goal takes 5 years. No matter how hard you go, you're not going to achieve a 5-year goal in 3 months. It's impossible. You could do all the right things in the world with your training, your diet, your recovery, but if you're not giving time to operate, then you're never going to get there. So there could be a billion reasons as to why they do this, but it comes down to just being impatient. So even if these guys that are getting fat are doing all the right things theoretically, they're giving themselves too short of a time span to achieve the goal. And so we can learn from their mistakes to ensure that we do it right. But we should probably know what our goals are. These are our objectives. What are we trying to accomplish? There's 3 that I want to focus on. So if we're bulking up, our goal is to build muscle, get stronger, and then not get fat while trying to accomplish these 2 things. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that step by step. So by the end of this video, you'll have a full roadmap of what to do so you don't get fat. I want to make this clear right now. This is a diet problem. This is not solved with training. It's not caused by training. It's not caused by lack of recovery. It is entirely the amount of food they're taking in versus the amount they're burning off. And the fact is the guys that are getting too fat are eating too much. They're eating too many calories because they're trying to force feed muscle growth. So I'm going to solve this really quickly because this is going to be a pretty recurring theme throughout the video. When you're eating a certain amount of calories, you have, every single human has this, an amount of calories needed to maintain your current weight. This is known as your maintenance calories, this little line here. Eating anything less than this maintenance calories will cause you to lose weight. And if you eat so few that your weight keeps dropping, then eventually you will die because your body doesn't have any fuel to devote to your brain, your organs, your bones, keeping you alive, right? So you need a certain amount of calories to maintain your weight. The thing with building muscle is that it is not a priority for your body. Your body's going to use all these calories first for your brain, your organs, your bones, keeping you alive. This is used as fuel. And so building muscle is not your body's number 1 priority. But if you eat a little bit more than what is required, then your body can use those extra calories to devote right to muscle growth. The problem is with the guys who bulk up so hard and they get so obese is that they eat so much more food, they eat too much calories, thinking that all these extra calories will go straight to muscle growth. But that's not true. If the body has more calories than what's needed to sustain itself, it's going to store that as energy for later use. That's also known as body fat. And so all of these extra calories pretty much go straight to fat, which means if we're trying to build muscle without the fat, we don't need these extra calories. All we need is a little bit more so we get the muscle growth. So where do we start? We know that this is a diet problem, and we know this can be solved with the diet if we do the right things with our food. Let's assume that it's day 1, right? You're just starting out. What is the first step? The first step that we do on the first day? That would be to find your maintenance calories. So, right, we have the amount of calories that we need to eat to stay alive, and then we have what's needed to keep us at our current weight. This line right here that you see, that is our maintenance calories. We need to know what that is. The problem with not knowing where your maintenance calories is if you have it set over here, if you assume that your maintenance calories is right here, and then you start bulking up, eating this much more food, then you are actually eating way more than what's needed to sustain yourself. And that means you are getting those extra fat calories. But if you're eating way less, then you're under eating and you're going to lose a bunch of weight. So we need to know the right number. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. I already made a video on how to do this and it's like 1 minute long, but to summarize the 1 minute video, you're going to go to Google and you're going to search calorie calculator. I'll put CC right here, calorie calculator, just those 2 words. You're gonna go to the first website you see, you'll enter your stats, they'll ask you for your height, your age, your weight, your activity level. These are things you're gonna have to give the calculator. Make sure you're as accurate as possible with these, because if you give it wrong numbers, it's gonna give you a wrong amount of calories. And then it's going to tell you, for example, for this video, let's just say it says you need 2,500 calories a day to maintain your current weight. What I want you to do now with this 2,500 calories, I want you to get a scale, step on it, and weigh in. So let's just say your weight, your first weigh-in is 130 pounds. So you weigh in at 130 pounds. What I want you to do is eat this amount of calories every day for 1 week, 7 days. You're gonna eat 2,500 calories a day for 1 week straight. And then I want you to weigh yourself again the next week. In most cases, your weight is gonna be pretty much the same. Now it might be 130.2 or 130.4, maybe 130.6. It might go up a little bit, it might go down a little bit, that's okay. But if for the most part, if it's staying within a 0 to 1 pound range, then I would say this amount of calories is your maintenance calories. I'll show you what to do for that next. But if your weight goes up, if you go from 130 to 131, this amount of calories is going to be a good place for you to bulk. So you can actually start bulking right away off of this amount of calories. But if you follow these steps, weigh in, eat for a week, and then weigh in again, and you actually lose weight, let's just say you go from 130 and you're now 128, this amount of calories is too little. So what do we do from here? Let's assume that for simplicity's sake, your weight stays the same. You start at 130 pounds and you end at 130 pounds. What do we do now? This is where step 2 comes in. But I want to say you can't skip from step 1 to step 2. You have to go through this week-long process. If you're just starting out, you have to go through this process. This isn't negotiable, because I'd rather have you wait a week and get it right than guess and get it wrong. So you have to know how many calories you need to eat. That's very important. In fact, it's the most important thing. So now that you know your maintenance calories, we've accomplished this. And right now it's 2,500 a day and we're 130 pounds. So I'll write our stats right here. Now a week has passed and it is day 7. What's the next step? Well, we have to know how many calories we need to grow, right? We're trying to get bigger. We're trying to get stronger. We're trying to get more jacked. We have to be eating more calories to keep growing. So how many calories do we eat? Well, for 99.9999% of you watching this, it's going to be 300 to 700 calories over your maintenance. The reason why I went 300 to 700 and not 100 to 1,000 is because if you're going much less than 300 calories over, the gains are going to be pretty slow and it's kind of pointless gaining that little, especially on your first bulk. But if you're eating way more than 700, you're eating 800, 1,000, 2,000 calories over your maintenance, then you're going to end up in that fat, dirty territory. You're going to get fat, you're going to get disgusting, no one's going to love you, and that'll be it. So I think this is a pretty strong range to start. If you don't know where to start, you're looking at this and you have no idea where to begin, I would err in the middle to the left side. So that would look like a 300 to 500 calorie surplus. And in the context of our guy here, you go from 2,500 to 2,800 calories a day, or 2,500 to 3,200 calories a day. Anywhere between this range, good place to start. The problem with the guys who get really fat is they go way over this right side. They don't even go to the top end of this range. They go way over. And so those extra calories get devoted to fat, which is pretty much useless for building muscle. If you're wondering how much weight you'll gain per week, that depends on the amount of calories you're eating. In fact, a lot of the things in a bulk depend on how many calories you're eating. I'll use the 300 to 500 example. So if you're eating 300 calories over your maintenance, that would be, in this case, 2,800 or 300 over whatever number you got, you can expect to gain between 0.4 and 0.8 pounds per week. And now in most cases, you're going to gain 0.6 right in the middle, but sometimes your weight's going to fluctuate. Sometimes you'll gain less, sometimes you'll gain more. For the most part, it's going to be this. And so this 0.6 pounds, it's not all muscle. It's not all fat. It's not all water. The idea is that with your good training, with your good food choices, with your good sleep, we want to be able to make sure that the maximum amount of this weight is muscle. If the majority of this weight is fat, then what's the point? Why are we bulking in the first place? We want to make sure that the maximum amount of this weight is muscle mass. That is the goal of a bulk. It's just harder to get that maximum weight being muscle mass if you're eating so many calories. So now we know how many calories we need to eat. But what about food choices? Doesn't that matter? I mean, if we're eating the amount of calories that we need to grow, then those calories don't really matter, right? As long as they're calories, it's okay, right? No, the food choices do matter. And honestly, this is what separates a clean and a dirty bulk. It's one of the biggest differentiators between the two. The guys that you see getting so fat on social media, they're typically going for this approach. And so I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with it. We'll get into that in a second, but I'll cover a few points about each. A clean bulk, for the most part, will have you eating 80% of your foods on average come from healthy, clean food sources. Think vegetables, fruits, meats, all these different things. And then 20% you're a little bit looser with. Maybe you get some fast food, maybe you get some chips, some cereal, chocolate milk, etc. A dirty bulk is more like 50-50. So the healthy to not healthy ratio is pretty much the same. The thing is, it's actually easier to eat like this. It's easier to get those calories down. If you've ever had a burger, you probably felt like you could eat 5 burgers or 10 donuts. It's harder to eat 5 whole pieces of chicken breast, right? Or something that's not as appetizing. And so guys will do this because it's easier. But then it's actually harder in the long term because they get fat, because they get too carried away and they get too obsessed with seeing the weight on the scale move. The guys who also bulk like this are hyper fixated on the weight. This is what I mean. Let's just say they start at 150 pounds and they say, by the end of this bulk, I want to be 180. In 6 months, I want to be 180. They want to gain 30 pounds in 6 months. You could totally do that. It's physically possible to gain 30 pounds in 6 months. But what is that weight consisting of? Is it fat? Is it water? Is it muscle? We ideally want it to be muscle. The problem is when you're gaining so much weight so fast, this fat gain is always going to outpace this muscle gain. So you'll gain more of this than this. A lot of these dirty bulk guys think the trade-off is worth it, but I promise you it's not, especially over a long time span. I'll show you something pretty funny. So let's just say we have 2 versions of you, and you're bulking up and you're eating 3,000 calories a day. One version of you is doing a clean bulk, the other is doing a dirty bulk. And even though you're eating the same amount of calories, you theoretically wouldn't gain more weight, right? Because you're eating the same amount of food. But if you're eating less clean food than this guy, and you're eating dirtier foods than this guy's body is going to perform significantly worse. Now, their weight might stay the same. They might grow at the same pace, but this guy's going to feel crappier. He'll probably end up building less muscle. He won't have as much energy. He'll be more sluggish. He'll get more acne. He'll have worse digestion. There's a lot of different things that go into this kind of bulk. And so I don't ever recommend doing just a disgusting mukbang dirty bulk. In fact, I think I have a better solution that takes the best of both worlds. I'll show you what I mean. Real quick, if you want everything we've covered, not just in this video, but all of them, your life, your work, and the foods you like to eat, I do all of this stuff completely customized one-on-one. And so if you want everything tailored for you, you can go to theincrediblebulk.ca/join, apply for a call with me, and we'll see if you're a good fit. I'm going to make 2 graphs. And so these are going to be versions of you. One version who does a clean bulk and one who does a looser bulk, let's just say. We'll call it loose. The time span for both of these is going to be 5 years. Assuming that the bulk and cut cycle is 1 year long, we're going to do 5 of them. So the guy who does the clean bulk is going to gain a decent amount of weight the first time around. And then he's not going to have to cut that much because he's not losing that much body fat. He'll gain again, not that much, but he's also not cutting that much, right? He's not gaining that much body fat throughout the process. And so he can just repeat this process again and again and again. But over time, the amount he gains will be less. And so he built a certain amount of muscle over a 5-year time span. How much muscle he builds depends on his genetics, his training, his sleep, his recovery, all this stuff. But let's just say he builds this amount of muscle. Now let's move to the looser bulk. So this guy, this version of you, he does his looser bulk and he gains a ton of weight. And honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if he gained as much weight as this guy did over a 5-year time span, because this guy is dirty bulking. He could bulk up 30, 40 pounds in his first bulk. And since he's skinny, he actually doesn't have to cut down all that much. So he ends up in a pretty decent spot his first time around. After that first dirty bulk, he feels, hey, this worked pretty good. Let me do it again. And then he gains a lot more weight, but a lot more of that weight that he gains is fat. And so he only makes a slight improvement. Then he does it again. And he gains even more fat. Then he does it again. And he's barely progressing now. And most of the weight that he's gaining is lost because it is just fat. He's gaining all this weight and he ends up right here. So the first time it worked out really well for him, but the times after that, the improvements weren't that strong. And so over a 5-year time span, he gains this amount of muscle. The guy who does a clean bulk doesn't have very high peaks. He doesn't gain that much weight. Let's just say over this 5 years, this guy gains 30 pounds of muscle. Very possible. People can gain a lot more, they can gain a lot less. Let's assume that this guy gains 30 pounds over the course of 5 years. But the funny thing is, his peak weights aren't as high as this guy's are. Right? This guy gets way heavier. But that doesn't really matter when he has to cut down and he's left with this amount of muscle. If we were to draw a line to compare the two, this guy ends up winging out this guy. This guy builds more muscle than this guy, even though this guy weighed more. And so here's what I mean when I say you can take the best of both worlds. If it's your first ever bulk, I'm going to put a picture on screen. This is what I used to look like before I started bulking, about a year and some change before I got into the gym. So I was super skinny, had zero muscle, but I also had zero body fat. And so you can see the striations in the chest, you can see the abs, the obliques. I was ripped, but I just had no muscle to accompany that. And so if this was my first ever bulk, I actually don't think it's a bad idea to do this as your first bulk. I think that's actually a solid idea. And then once you get those big gains, you know that later on, if you keep doing these kind of bulks, you're not going to get that much progress. So you can do this kind of a bulk and then transition to the clean side. So you can do this first instead of this, and then do the clean ones after that and end up with even more muscle. If you just did clean bulking, maybe you end up right here. But if you did the looser bulk first and then the clean bulks after that, maybe you end up right here. So better than both of these guys. Now that's for people who really want to get jacked. Like I gained 103 pounds. This is exactly what I did. The first bulk that I did was pretty loose. It was pretty aggressive and I had a lot more unhealthy food than I'm having now. But now my bulks after that were super clean and are still super clean. And I ended up getting pretty good results. The thing is, I did gain some fat throughout the process. And so if you want to stay shredded the entire time, then you can go this clean bulking route and still gain a lot more muscle than this guy over here. You can go loose bulk first, and everything after that is clean. That's what I would do. The problem with the guys that you see getting super fat is that this works out so well for them in the beginning, right? The guys that are getting fat on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, they're not doing one bulk and getting fat. This is a result of multiple of these. The thing is that they get such good results from their first looser, dirty bulk, they're incentivized to keep going because they got such good results. Why would they stop? Why would they ever go to this side, right? This side's stupid. But then they gain so much extra fat just to gain these little itty bitty gains, right? Now our graph looks super messy. But I think it's a smart idea. If you're trying to get really jacked and build a lot of muscle, I think this is actually a better play. If you were to be a little bit looser, maybe you're not 50-50 with your food choices. Maybe you're 60-40. Could do that. That totally works. I think 50-50 is taking it a little bit too far because, you don't want to be having complete garbage, but maybe you go 60-40 or 70-30, right? You don't have to keep a perfect ratio every single day. I'm saying for the most part, over a 1-year time span. So even though the dirty bulk guy gains more weight, that does not mean he gained more muscle. Okay, so you understand the difference between a clean and a looser bulk. How do we separate the two? A lot of it depends on the amount of calories you're eating. Now, of course, the quality of your foods matters. If you're replacing your chicken breast and your ground beef with Big Macs and fried chicken. Not ideal, right? But there's other things that contribute to the difference between the two. So if you're eating in a 300 calorie surplus, I would consider that, for the most part, clean eating. If you're eating 700 or higher more than your maintenance, even if the food is healthy, you're kind of approaching that dirty territory, because regardless of where those calories are coming from, if it's from fast food or it's from healthy foods, if you're still eating, this is your maintenance right here, if you're still eating way above your maintenance and it's all healthy food, your body doesn't care. I mean, you're going to gain less fat if the food's healthier, but you're still sending all those extra calories straight to fat gain. Not ideal. And so I don't think a 700 calorie surplus is bad. I'm saying don't go way over that, like 1,000, 2,000. So how long do we do a bulk for, right? Because that could be another differentiator between these two things. From what I've experienced, from the guys I work with, and from science, 4 to 12 months. That is going to be the best range for a bulk, because it gives your body enough time to build the muscle. And if you're eating less calories, if you're having a smaller calorie surplus, you can go for longer. If you're having a higher calorie surplus, you probably shouldn't bulk as long, because your body's going to be using eventually more calories towards fat. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say I have my two hands here, and you think of this like a scale at a grocery store. You know, when you weigh the food and the scale tips up and down? If you're eating so many more calories, if you're eating in a really high calorie surplus, then you're going to gain a lot of muscle at the start, like we talked about, not that much fat. But over time, that scale is going to tip, and the amount of fat you gain is going to outpace the amount of muscle you gain. And so over time, it'll go like that. But with clean eating, you're going to gain a good amount of muscle and not that much fat. And it pretty much stays like this the whole time. So you can do it for longer. A dirtier or looser bulk typically is done for a shorter time period, but anywhere between 4 and 12 months, you'll see some good gains. I personally bulk for about 6 to 8 months at a time, and it's worked out pretty good. But do we just eat 300 to 700 calories over our maintenance? Do we just go from 2,500 to 3,000, and do we just eat 3,000 a day for a year? No, we have to adjust based on our progress. And so here's what I mean by that. So when you're starting out, you have your maintenance calories, right? That we've covered 1,000 times. You have the amount of calories needed to maintain your weight. Let's say that number is 2,500 that you've calculated. And then you decide, I want to start with a 500 calorie surplus. So you start eating 3,000 calories a day. Guess what's going to happen? Your weight's going to go up. It's going to increase over time, but eventually you will hit another wall. Your weight will stop going up. Now, what does this mean? It means that your body has adjusted for a new maintenance. So this was your old maintenance. This is your new maintenance. If you were to eat less calories, then your body would lose weight and your maintenance would be lower. So your maintenance isn't one number forever for the rest of your life, no matter what your weight is. Your maintenance fluctuates based on how much you weigh. And so let's just say we're at this 3,000 calorie mark. What do we do from here? Well, if you want to keep bulking and you're not fat and you're still lean and you want to keep growing, then you're probably going to have to add more calories. You're going to have to add on to this. But how many more calories do we eat? That is a great question. A lot of people online in the fitness space will tell you to add 500 or 1,000 calories more. I think this is garbage advice, and I'll tell you why. Let's just say you go to the upper range. You add 1,000 calories. If you started at 2,000 calories, your weight plateaus, and then you add 1,000 calories to 3,000, that is a 1.5x increase in food. It is a 150% increase. I don't know about you, but that's a heck of a lot more food than I'm willing to take on. So I don't think adding a set amount of calories is a good idea. I instead go for percentages. Through trial and error, through science, and through experience, 5%. You add 5% of the calories onto the daily total. So 3,000 now becomes 3,150. And so you're going to eat 3,150 calories a day. And guess what's going to happen to your weight? It's going to keep going up. And then eventually, you're going to hit a new maintenance. You're going to plateau. What do we do from here? If you want to keep bulking, add another 5%. Going to keep going up. And you can go up and up and up and repeat this process pretty much forever, or until you want to stop bulking. But how do we know when we've plateaued? How do we know that we've hit a new maintenance? This is by far the easiest way to tell, and that is to track the metrics. What are metrics? Metrics are tangible statistics that you can keep count of throughout the process of bulking. Because we can't just eat more food or do workouts or recover and then expect to make gains for the long term. We have to make adjustments throughout the process. So what does tracking metrics look like? There's 3 main ones that I want to focus on. And those metrics are your calories, your measurements, and your lifts. You're probably wondering, George, what do any of those things mean? Don't worry, because we're not going to cover these 2 in this video. I've already covered how to track calories in one of the other videos on the channel, as well as lifts. This is not talked about enough. Your measurements. What are your measurements? Well, we actually have 3 measurements that we can do. So we have 3 metrics, and we have 3 subsets of measurements. Your body weight, the size of your waist, and your muscles. These are things I highly, highly, highly recommend tracking. If you were to work with me one-on-one, I track everything for you. But if you want to do it on your own, I'll show you how. It just takes more effort. Let's start with your body weight. If you are not keeping track of metrics and you have no idea what's going on through the process, you're only lowering the chance of success. Think of this like shooting a basketball, right? If you're in a gym and you're trying to make a shot, you're trying to hit a 3-point shot, and you're trying to shoot a basketball, but now the lights are off in the gym and you can't see the hoop. What is the likelihood that you make that shot? Pretty low, right? You can't see the hoop, you have no idea what's going on. Okay, what if I turn the lights off in the gym and I can still kind of guess where the hoop is because I could see it earlier? But what if I turn 5 times? What if I spin around? Now I have no idea where the hoop is and it's dark in the gym. What are the chances that I hit that 3-point shot? Much lower. Now what if I were to shoot with my opposite hand? Much lower. And so the more things that you don't keep account of, the lower your chances of success. And if we're trying to bulk correctly, we're trying to bulk without getting fat, I suggest keeping track of the metrics. For some guys, this is a pain in the butt. That's why I do it for them. But if you want to be a hero, I'll show you how to do it. Let's start with your body weight. It's a 4-step process. So I'll draw it out live. You do it first thing in the morning. You wake up, go straight to the bathroom. Don't drink any fluids. Don't eat any food. No water, nothing. You pee, you poop. Ideally, you want to poop as well. You step on the scale with no clothes on, and then you weigh in. And what's going to happen is it's going to give you a number. Let's just say it's 130 pounds. I want you to keep track of those weigh-ins. And I want you to do this process 1 to 2 times a week. So personally, for the guys who join the Incredible Bulk, for the most part, they weigh in on Thursday and Sunday mornings. What about their waist? The reason why the waist is really important is because it is a direct reflection of how much fat you're gaining. Think about it. When you think of someone who's in shape, you typically think of someone who has a small waist. But if you're bulking up and your waist gets massive, starts flowing over the edge, you got a bit of a muffin top, your abs are less visible, you can't really see the definition, that is not a good thing. Makes me sad. So we want to keep that waist tight. We want to keep it small. There's no actual way to make your waist smaller except to enter a calorie deficit. But since we're bulking, we're eating in a calorie surplus. So how do we keep our waist the same size throughout a bulk? Great question. You only need one thing for this. Tape measure. All you got to do is grab a tape measure and measure in between your belly button and your hips. And you put the tape measure around your body, and then you just keep track of that. But if you want a more specific way to look at it, I have something that I call the 2-inch rule. At any point in the bulk, any point at all. It can be from month 1 to month 3, month 1 to month 6, month 1 to month 12. If I'm bulking for any duration of time, at any point throughout the bulk, I don't want my waist to grow more than 2 inches. So if I start at 30 inches on my waist and I end up at 33 at some point in the bulk, I know that I'm gaining too much weight too quickly, and most of that weight is going to be fat. That's not what I want. Now, 2 inches is a pretty tight range to work inside of. So if you want to do 3 or 4 inches, that works too. I'm not against it. I just want to keep my waist tight personally. And so I do 2 inches. I also do that for my clients as well. But if you want to increase the rule, then go right ahead. I'm just saying you want to keep your waist tight, because if you're gaining a ton of weight, but then you're also gaining a ton of size on your waist, then it's a good sign that most of that weight is not the weight you want. And finally, we want to track the size of our muscles. So you can do this with a tape measure as well. The easiest muscles to track are your arms, your legs, and your chest. All you got to do, wrap it around, keep track of it in the notes app on a pen and paper. Whatever you want to do, keep track of these. I recommend measuring these once a month or once every 3 months just to know that you're gaining some size. The thing is with these metrics is that I purposely organize them in order of things that are going to grow the fastest to slowest. And I know the muscles is the one thing that you want it to grow, but your weight's going to grow first, then your waist is probably going to creep up, and then, if you're lucky, your muscles are going to grow. That's how you keep track of metrics. The problem with the guys who are getting too fat is that they're gaining so much weight, or they don't even know how much weight they're gaining. Their waist is getting huge, their weight's getting huge, and their muscles are also growing. But then when they cut down, they lose a good amount of that muscle, and they end up with barely more than what they started with. Before we get into our roadmap, there's one more thing that I want to talk about. So let's just say you're doing this lean bulk and you're gaining muscle, you're not gaining much fat, but then all of a sudden you're getting a little bit fatter than you'd like to. What do? Well, you remember that 5% rule from earlier? Be the opposite. Subtract 5%. Even if you're doing all the right things in the world, maybe your body still ends up gaining more fat than you'd like to. And so I just subtract 5%. 3,000 becomes 2,850. Eat 2,850 calories a day from here on out. If you want another way to go about it, you can also add a cardio session. Now, this is what the fat guys miss, is that they think cardio kills gains, but that's not true. Cardio only kills gains if you're taking that intensity away from your exercise. And it's pretty hard to take away the intensity from your exercise if you do your cardio on a different day altogether. So what I recommend is if you're going to be bulking up, regardless if it's a lean or dirty bulk, I recommend doing 100 to 150 minutes a week of zone 2 cardio. What is zone 2 cardio, you might be asking? It is the zone, the area of cardio where it is hard to have a conversation. It's hard to talk to somebody. If you've ever tried walking on the treadmill and you're walking fast enough that you try to sing a song and you can't really sing because you're out of breath, that's zone 2 cardio. A more accurate way to judge this, if you don't want to use this, is 65% of your max heart rate, or estimated max. So if your max heart rate is 200, then your heart would beat on average 130 times a minute. And so 130 is 65% of 200. But 100 to 150 minutes a week of zone 2 cardio. And if you average this out, it doesn't take that long. In fact, it only takes about 14 to 22 minutes a day. And I do this every single morning. Every morning I hop on the treadmill and I walk zone 2 cardio for about 18 minutes-ish a day. I do that 7 days a week. I'm getting my 100 to 150 minutes. Most guys skip cardio because they think it kills gains, but that's not true. If you do cardio on a different day, then you're not trading away the effort and energy for cardio. That's not how it works. But if you're running ultra marathons, if you're running the Boston Marathon, if you're doing Ironmans, these crazy endurance races, yes, that will take away gains. Of course it will. You never really see jacked guys running many marathons. There's a reason for that. They're expending so many extra calories through their endurance racing that they don't have much to build muscle and their bodies are constantly under stress. But if you do cardio on a different day, you don't run into that problem, especially if it's not intense. Now you will sweat, your pulse is going to climb up, your heart's going to beat faster, but you're not going to be like out of breath dying doing this cardio. It's a pretty simple walk. And if you can't do it on a different day and you have to do it on the same day, do it at opposite ends. So what I mean by this is if you're working out at night, do cardio in the morning. If you're working on the morning, do cardio at night. So do it at opposite ends of the day so you have all this extra time in between to recover, to eat, to drink water, to take a nap if you need to. You have all this extra time. But this does not kill your gains. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It only kills your gains when you're putting more effort into this than you are into your lifts. So now that we got everything out of the way, I'm going to build a complete roadmap so you know exactly what to do to not get fat on your bulk. So no matter what happens, we have to know our maintenance calories. And you do this by calculating this online like we talked about earlier. And then you are going to eat this amount of food every day for 1 week straight. This is non-negotiable. You can't skip over this because I don't want you to guess the amount of food you need. The next step after that week is done is to eat the amount of calories that we need to grow. But based off this maintenance, maybe you can already bulk off this calories. Maybe it's a good starting point for you. Maybe you need to eat a little bit extra to start growing. Or maybe it's not enough and you lose weight after this first week, so you need a lot more. That's going to depend on you. But based on that result, you can start your bulk by eating 300 to 700 calories over your maintenance. And so like I said, if you eat a smaller calorie surplus, then you can do that bulk for longer. You won't gain as much fat, but it's going to take longer to get those results. You're going to gain a lot slower. But if you're eating that 500 to 700 calorie surplus, then you can expect to gain a lot quicker. It's just that you can't bulk as long. And on a weekly basis, I want you to weigh in and measure your waist as well. I wouldn't do this every day because your weight's going to fluctuate naturally. Your waist is going to fluctuate. And so these things will change from the day to day and it'll be super inconsistent. But over the course of a week, are you gaining weight? Are you gaining 0.4 to 0.8 pounds per week? Are you gaining 5 pounds a week? Are you not gaining weight at all? Are you losing weight? It's good to know these things. And so I would track this once a week. I'll put a star next to this box so you know that it's recurring. You're doing it again and again and again. The next step is to keep eating that amount of food. Keep eating, keep training, keep sleeping, keep progressing. But we're talking about the diet this video. You want to keep eating. You want to keep measuring your waist every week, your weight. You want to monitor, am I getting fat? Am I still seeing my abs? Is my jawline still visible, right? These are questions you have to ask yourself. So you want to keep eating. But eventually, you're going to plateau. Your weight is going to stop going up. So this is where I recommend if you want to keep bulking, if you want to keep growing, add 5% of those calories onto the daily total. 3,000 becomes 3,150. 2,000 becomes 2,100. Stuff like that. What do you do next? You keep eating. You keep weighing in. You keep measuring your waist. You keep eating that amount of food. But maybe, just maybe, you get too fat. So what do? We decrease by 5%. Or we add cardio. I'll put C there. We add cardio. Or we could do both of these. You could decrease 5% and add cardio. Do whatever you want. But through this entire process, we are doing cardio, right? This entire time, we are consistently doing cardio. It is not something that you do only when you're getting fat. You're doing it the entire time. 100 to 150 minutes a week of zone 2. And if you started your maintenance, give yourself a week, find your calorie surplus, you continue to weigh in and measure your waist, you eat that food, you progress based off your weigh-ins, or you lower the amount of food based off your weigh-ins, and you do this entire process and you monitor your body fat the entire time, you will experience lean gains, lean muscle, gaining weight without getting fat. This is the blueprint. As simple as it looks, that is it. This is solved by your diet. It's not solved by your training. Of course, you do have to train. I'm not talking about training in this video or recovery. This is all food intake. So I'll run it over one more time. You find your maintenance calories, you eat that amount of calories every day for a week, then based off those results, if your weight stays the same, if it increases or decreases, you'll start your calorie surplus anywhere between this range. Then every single week, you're weighing in, you're measuring your waist. You got to eat at this calorie surplus every day. Once your weight plateaus, because it will eventually, and you want to keep bulking, add 5% of the calories, eat that new amount of food, and then if you get too fat, you can decrease the amount of calories, add more cardio. The entire time, we are doing cardio through this process. And if you give yourself enough time with good training and good sleep, you will experience lean gains. That is a lean bulk at its core fundamentals. So guys, I know that's a lot of information, but hopefully you can rewind through the video and see where you are in this process. Maybe you're at day 1, maybe you're getting too fat, maybe you need to start doing cardio, right? There's a bunch of different things that we can do to make this process much better for us. But the entire goal of a bulk that people seem to mess up every time is that the goal of a bulk is to speed up muscle growth. It's not to put weight on the scale. Because like I said, you can go from 150 to 200 pounds, but if you're gaining 50 pounds of fat, who cares, right? There's a lot of 600, 800 pound people out there, and none of them are in shape because they're fat, they're obese. And so the weight on the scale doesn't matter. It's just a reflection of the ego. If you can get past that, follow this process and give yourself time, you will experience lean gains. And the longer you give yourself, the more gains you'll experience. If you want my personal take, I'd probably do a looser bulk at the start. So maybe a little less clean food and more easy to eat food, I'll say. Maybe you want to add in fattier meats or you want to get fast food every now and again. I don't think that's a bad thing. It just gets bad when you keep repeating that process thinking it's going to get you more gains. It's not. For the final time, go loose first, then clean for everything after that. This is the exact process I run on myself and the guys I work with. So like I said, this is a lot of information. It's a lot of things to learn and it's a lot of things to get wrong. And I didn't even talk about tracking lifts, tracking calories, training adjustments, because you have to make all these adjustments for your training, for your recovery throughout the process as well. It's not just the food. So if you guys want some extra help with this stuff, I have free meal plans and free training programs. Should probably put an S here. And so if you guys want these things absolutely free, I just need your email so I can send it to you. Then you can go to the links in the description and I'll have them absolutely free. You fill out your information so I know which meal plan to send you and you don't have to pay a dime for it. But if you want the food, the training, the recovery, the adjustments throughout the process completely tailored and tracked for your life, for your work, for your busy lifestyle, I do this stuff custom one-on-one and I'm currently taking on clients. So if that interests you, you can go to theincrediblebulk.ca/join and I'm currently taking on one-on-one guys. So if this is something that you're really trying to change and you're not trying to mess it up at all, this is what I do. And if you still don't know who I am, my name is George Tressiter. I am the founder of The Incredible Bulk, where we take skinny guys and get them jacked. And the reason why I founded this company is because there's not enough coverage for the skinny guys out there. I know what it's like to want to get bigger, to want to build muscle, and have no one to really reach out to for it. So I had to figure this stuff out on my own. And eventually I did and created a system around it. That is what The Incredible Bulk is for. In a world that's so fixated on losing weight and getting shredded, I'm going to show you guys how to get strong. So I hope this video was useful to help you get jacked without getting fat. And I got nothing else to say, so talk soon.